The whispering woods. The deeper we went, the more the familiar sounds of town faded, replaced by the ancient symphony of Greenwood Hollow. Sunlight, once dappled, now struggled through the thick canopy, painting the moss-covered ground in shifting patterns of emerald and gloom. The air hung heavy, cool, and damp, smelling richly of decaying leaves, damp earth, and something else. Something wild and untamed. My backpack felt heavier with every step, a counterpoint to the rising thrum of excitement and apprehension in my chest. Beside me, Leo adjusted his glasses, peering intently at a worn map he'd supposedly found in his grandfather's attic. According to this, he announced, his voice hushed yet carrying in the stillness, the Heart Springs should be just beyond the old Sentinel Oak. Supposedly, its water does things. Maya snorted, effortlessly vaulting over a fallen log thick with ivy. Does things? Like turn you into a toad? Or just give you really bad heartburn? Her grin was infectious, a flash of white in the green dimness. Fear rarely touched Maya. It was one of the things I admired, and occasionally found terrifying, about her. It's supposed to be restorative, Leo insisted, tracing a finger on the parchment. A place of power. Legends say a lot of things, Leo, Ben rumbled. From behind us. Ben, solid and dependable as the ancient oaks themselves, was carrying most of the emergency supplies. His usual calm seemed edged with a watchfulness today, his eyes constantly scanning the shadows beneath the massive ferns, mostly to lure idiots like us deeper into places we shouldn't be. I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. Ben's pragmatism often clashed with Leo's bookish enthusiasm and Maya's fearless drive, leaving me, as usual, somewhere in the middle, the cautious dreamer. We said we'd just find the spring, take a look, and head back before dusk. I reminded them, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. Stick to the plan. The plan felt flimsier the further we ventured. The path Leo insisted was marked on. The map dissolved into little more than animal trails. Roots snaked across the forest floor, eager to trip the unwary. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive. The rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the distant, mournful cry of a bird I couldn't name, the constant drip of moisture from leaves high above. It all combined into a whispering presence that pressed in from all sides. The darkness beneath the ferns seemed deeper, more substantial, as if it could swallow you whole. We found the Sentinel Oak an hour later. It wasn't hard to miss. It was a Goliath, its trunk wider than Ben was tall, its bark deeply fissured like the skin of some slumbering titan. One massive limb, long dead and bleached bone-white by time, pointed accusingly deeper into the gloom. Following its direction, the ground sloped downwards more steeply. The descent was treacherous. The air grew colder, damper. The scent of decay, intensified, mixed now with the mineral tongue of wet stone. The dense foliage gave way to towering rock faces draped in thick curtains of moss and clinging vines. The light faded dramatically and then we heard it. Not the cheerful babble we expected, but a low, powerful roar we pushed through a final curtain of hanging vines and froze. The Heart Spring wasn't a gentle pool. It was the origin point of a furious cascade. Water exploded from a jagged fissure, high in the moss-blackened cliff face, crashing down into a churning, turquoise pool maybe 30 feet below. Mist hung thick in the air, catching the feeble light and refracting it into tiny, shimmering rainbows. The sound was immense, a physical vibration in our chests, drowning out all other forest sounds. It's incredible, Maya breathed, her earlier skepticism replaced by awe. She edged closer to the sheer drop-off overlooking the pool. Powerful, yes, Leo murmured, his eyes wide behind his glasses, not on the water, but on intricate, faded symbols carved into the rock face beside the fissure. These markings, they're older than anything I've seen referenced. They don't match known dialects. Ben, however, wasn't looking at the water or the carvings. He was staring intently at the far side of the churning pool. "There," he said, his voice tight. "Cave mouth. Almost hidden behind that waterfall." He was right. Partially obscured by the thundering curtain of water was a darker patch, an opening, in the rock. It looked like a slitted eye watching us dot. The sheer scale and raw power of the place was humbling, exhilarating. But that cave, it emanated a different energy, a stillness that felt ancient and watchful, contrasting violently with the chaos of the falls. The hair on my arms prickled. This was the source of the deeper unease I'd felt. Maya, of course, saw it as the ultimate challenge. "We have to. Check it out. Imagine what could be in there." Leo, torn between academic fervor and growing trepidation, chewed his lip. "The map, it doesn't show a cave. This changes things." Ben shook his head firmly. "No, absolutely not. That rock is slick, the current's treacherous. One slip near that pool, and you're gone. And we know nothing about that cave." His gaze swept over us, landing on me. "We stick to the plan. We saw the spring. Now we head back." A tension crackled between them, sharper than before. Maya's eyes blazed with the desire to conquer the unknown. Ben's stance was immovable, rooted in protective instinct. Leo vibrated with intellectual curiosity, battling primal fear. And me? I felt the cave's pull, a morbid fascination mixed with icy dread. The whispers of the woods seemed to coalesce around that dark opening. A compromise was struck, brittle and temporary. We'd skirt the pool, giving the powerful, sucking eddies a wide berth. Get closer to the cave mouth without attempting entry, take some pictures of Leo's symbols, and then leave. Immediately, picking our way along the treacherous moss slick. Rocks beside the thunderous pool was nerve-wracking. The spray soaked us instantly. The roar was deafening, vibrating through our boots. Every step demanded total focus. The cave mouth grew larger, darker. Up close, the water crashing down before. It created a constant, shimmering veil. The air inside the cave entrance, visible in glimpses, was utterly still and black as pitched-out Leo scrambled closer to the carvings, his notebook already out, ignoring Ben's warning shout about the unstable ground. Maya, drawn like a magnet, edged towards the cave's threshold, peering into the impenetrable darkness. I stayed back, my camera feeling useless against the overwhelming atmosphere, my eyes darting between Leo's precarious perch and Maya's dangerous proximity to the void. That's when it happened. A section of the wet, moss-covered rock beneath Leo's feet gave way with a sickening crunch. He yelped, arms flailing, his glasses flying off as he scrabbled for purchase. He slid several feet down the steep, wet incline towards the churning pool. Ben moved like lightning. He lunged, not towards Leo, but towards the backpack Leo had dropped. He wrenched it open, pulling out the coiled rope we'd packed, just in case. Maya, reacting instantly, threw herself flat, anchoring herself behind a sturdy root, her hand outstretched towards Leo, shouting instructions lost in the roar. My heart hammered against my ribs. Time slowed. Leo's terrified face, Ben's focused. Intensity as he secured the rope, Maya's arm straining. I felt frozen, useless. Then Ben was tying the rope around his own waist, thrusting the other end at me. "Anchor! Now!" He bellowed over the dim dot. The command snapped me into action. I braced my feet against solid rock, wrapping the rope around my waist and arms, leaning back with all my weight as Ben, secured by me and anchored by Maya's grip on his belt, inched down the slope towards Leo. Every muscle screamed. A rope bit into my hands. The mist and roar disoriented me. Below, the turquoise water looked deceptively beautiful, but the power in its churn was terrifying. Ben reached Leo just as his scrabbling fingers found a slightly more secure ledge. He hauled him up, hand under his arm, leveraging against the rope. Maya and I held taut. It felt like an eternity. Muscles burning, breath ragged, the roar of the falls a constant assault. Finally, they scrambled back onto safer ground, Leo trembling violently, Ben breathing hard but steady. Leo's glasses were gone, vanished into the pool. He was pale, scratched, but miraculously unharmed beyond shock. The academic wonder was gone, replaced by raw, trembling relief. Maya helped him up, her face grim. All thoughts of the cave forgotten. No one spoke. The shared terror, the narrow escape, hung heavy in the mist-laden air. We looked at each other, then back at the cave mouth. The darkness within seemed deeper. Now, more knowing. It hadn't needed teeth or claws. The wild itself had almost claimed one of us. The heartspring's power wasn't restorative. It was primal, indifferent, and dangerous. The walk back was silent, punctuated only by the sounds of our labored breathing and the diminishing roar of the falls. The forest seemed less like a playground and more like a vast, watchful entity. We moved with a new urgency, helping Leo navigate without his glasses. Our earlier bickering replaced by a profound, unspoken solidarity. We'd faced the edge, looked into the abyss, and pulled each other back, emerging from the dense canopy as the late afternoon sun slanted gold through the trees. Felt like breaking the surface after a deep dive. The familiar sights of the town's outskirts were mundane, comforting. We stopped at the forest's edge, the hollow a dark wall of green behind us. Leo shivered, squinting at the world. I think I'll stick to libraries for a while. Maya clapped him on the shoulder, her usual bravado tempered. Yeah, maybe. She looked back at the trees, a new respect in her eyes, then just nodded. CH. My name isn't important. What matters is the place. The dense, primordial jungles cloaking the remote Taituangsa Mountains, where the air hangs thick with the scent of damp earth, rotting leaves, and unseen life. We were a small group, myself, my pragmatic friend Leo, and Sarah, whose quiet courage often surprised us. Our goal was simple: find the rumored Bata Caves, a network whispered about by locals, said to hold formations unlike anything documented, deep within a restricted watershed area. We knew the risks: leeches, snakes, sudden storms, and getting hopelessly lost. We didn't know the true cost of curiosity. The trek in was brutal. Vines snagged our packs like skeletal fingers. The humidity was a physical weight, our clothes plastered to our skin with sweat and the constant fine mist rising from the forest floor. The only sounds were the drone of insects, the occasional screech of unseen birds, and the rhythmic thwack of our machetes against the relentless undergrowth. Leo navigated with grim determination, using an old topographic map and a temperamental GPS. Sarah documented flora with quiet focus. I scanned the towering green walls, feeling watched. We found the entrance on the third day, just as light began to bleed from the sky. It wasn't grand. A jagged, dark maw, half hidden by a curtain of thick roots and hanging moss, exhaling air several degrees colder than the jungle. A faint mineral dampness, laced with something else, something vaguely organic and stale, washed over us. Excitement warred with a sudden, deep-seated unease. This felt wrong. Ancient. Using headlamps, we ventured inside. The beam cut through absolute blackness, revealing a cathedral of stone. Stalactites hung like petrified fangs. Stalagmites rose like the broken columns of a forgotten temple. But it was the walls that stole our breath. They weren't smooth limestone. They were covered in intricate, swirling patterns, deep grooves and ridges that looked less like erosion and more like scratches. Massive, deliberate, overlapping scratches, as if made by claws larger than any bear imaginable. The air hummed with a profound silence, broken only by the asterisk drip dot dot drip, drip asterisk of water, echoing with unnatural clarity. Our voices, even whispers, seemed amplified, distorted, bouncing off the unnerving walls. "Look at this," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She pointed her light at the cavern floor near a side passage. Distinctive three-toed tracks, impossibly large and sunk deep into the soft mud, vanished into the impenetrable darkness of the tunnel. They were fresh. The unease solidified into cold dread. This wasn't just a cave. It was a lair. Leo checked his machete. We should leave, now. But the jungle outside had other plans. As we turned to exit, the sky ripped open. Torrential rain, the kind only tropical mountains conjure, hammered down with terrifying force. Visibility dropped to zero. The path we'd cut vanished under a churning brown river of mud. Attempting descent in this was suicide. Trapped, our only shelter was the cave's ominous mouth. We retreated just inside the entrance, far enough to avoid the lashing rain, but not deep enough to lose sight of the storm-lit jungle. Setting up camp felt like sacrilege. We pitched our small tent on a relatively flat, dry patch of rocky floor, its cheerful orange fabric jarringly out of place against the primal gloom. We ate cold rations in near silence, our headlamps creating small, fragile pools of light in Pila-Zhang. The vast, watchful darkness. The rhythmic scratching patterns on the walls seemed to pulse in the flickering light. Every drip of water sounded like a footstep. Every rustle of wind through the entrance vines sounded like a breath. Sleep was impossible. The jungle screamed outside, the roar of rain, the groan of straining trees. Inside the cave, the silence was worse. It was a listening silence. I lay rigid in my sleeping bag, acutely aware of the tons of rock above us and the fathomless blackness stretching behind us. Leo kept his machete beside him. Sarah clutched her camera like a talisman. Then, deep within the cave, beyond the reach of our light, something moved. It wasn't loud. A skittering of dislodged pebbles. A heavy, dragging sound. Then silence. We froze, breath held. Minutes crawled. By nothing. Just the storm in the dripping water. Then it came again. Closer. A low, guttural rasp, like stone grinding on stone, or perhaps a breath drawn through a massive, congested chest. My blood turned to ice. Leo slowly sat up, his hand closing on the machete's handle. Sarah's eyes were wide saucers, reflecting the dim tent light. Thump. Something heavy impacted the cave floor, maybe 30 yards deeper in. The sound vibrated through the rock beneath us. Adrenaline surged, raw and electric. Whatever made those tracks, whatever carved those walls, was awake. And it knew we were here. The dragging sound resumed, deliberate, unhurried. Scrape. Scrape. Thud. It was circling, just beyond the edge of our light. We could feel its presence, a palpable wave of bestial awareness and territorial fury rolling towards us. The air grew thick with a new smell. Musky, feral, like wet fur and high. Old blood, cutting through the mineral dampness. It was the smell of the deep earth, of something that belonged to the dark. Outside, Leo hissed, his voice tight with terror. Now, the rains lessened. We take our chance. Abandoning the tent and most of our gear was an easy decision. Survival screamed at us to flee. We scrambled out into the chaotic aftermath of the storm. The jungle was a treacherous, waterlogged nightmare. Mud sucked at our boots. Branches, laden with water, lashed at our faces. We ran, stumbling, falling, driven by pure animal fear. expecting to hear crashing pursuit from the cave mouth at any second. We didn't stop until dawn stained the eastern sky a sickly gray. Exhausted, bruised, and shivering, we collapsed against the massive roots of a strangler fig. The cave was miles behind us, swallowed again by the green. We hadn't seen what hunted us in the dark. We only heard it, felt its weight, smelled its primeval stench. We saw its marks on ancient stone and fresh mud dot. We never spoke of it again, not in detail. We reported finding unusual geological formations, but omitted the tracks, the sounds, the crushing terror of that night. Some truths are too raw, too alien, to share. The jungle holds its secrets close, and the mountains guard their ancient, whispering caves. I carry the sound of that dragging step, the memory of those impossible scratches on the wall, and the chilling certainty that something vast and old and utterly inhuman woke in the dark that night, disturbed by the fragile light of intruders. It wasn't ghosts we feared. It was something older, something that belonged to the stone and the dark, something that walked the mountains long before men ever dreamed of exploring them. And sometimes in the deepest silence of night, I still hear the scrape of stone on stone, and I remember the true, terrifying depth of the wild. Here is a fictional camping story and told from your perspective as the narrator, with no symbols included. The decision felt monumental. 1 month, alone, deep within Whispering Pines National Forest. The city's constant hum had become a physical ache, and the wilderness called with the promise of silence and stars. My backpack, impossibly heavy with supplies, tent, sleeping bag, water filter, dehydrated meals, a sturdy knife, and notebooks felt like an anchor, dragging me towards a different reality. The first week was a symphony of adjustment. Setting. Up camp near a clear, babbling stream became my anchor. The silence wasn't empty. It was full. The rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the distant cry of a hawk, the constant whisper of wind through ancient pines. These became my new soundtrack. Loneliness tried to creep in at dusk, as shadows lengthened and the air cooled. But I learned to build a small fire, its crackling company pushing back the vastness of the dark. The sheer number of stars visible away from light pollution was humbling. A glittering blanket that made me feel wonderfully small dot by the second week. My senses sharpened. I woke with the sun filtering through the canvas, the air crisp and pine-scented. I learned the rhythm of the stream, its flow changing subtly after rain. I identified bird calls, the rhythmic knocking of a woodpecker, the cheerful chirp of chickadees, the mournful cry of a loon on a distant lake I discovered during a long hike. One misty morning, a young deer froze barely 10 yards from my tent, its large, liquid eyes meeting mine for a breathless moment before it bounded away, silent as a shadow. I found myself talking softly to squirrels, commenting on the weather to a curious chipmunk that investigated my bootlaces. The solitude wasn't isolating anymore. It was a connection to something raw and ancient dot. The third week brought challenges and deeper immersion. A sudden downpour tested my tent's waterproofing and my resolve, turning the forest floor into a muddy sponge. But huddled inside, listening to the drumming rain, I felt a profound sense of shelter. I explored further, finding a hidden waterfall cascading over mossy rocks, its cool spray a welcome relief on a warm afternoon. I spent hours sitting perfectly still by the stream, witnessing the intricate dance of a water strider, the patient hunting of a heron, the frantic energy of a beaver repairing its lodge at twilight. Time stretched and warped. Days were measured by the sun's arc, not by clocks. Hunger became a simple signal, satisfied by rehydrated stew eaten under the open sky. My thoughts, initially noisy with leftover city anxieties, gradually quieted, replaced by an awareness of the present moment, the feel of rough bark, The taste of clean water, the warmth of sunlight on my skin. The final week arrived with a bittersweet tone. I felt a physical strength I hadn't possessed in years, a deep calm settling in my bones. The forest felt less like a place I was visiting and more like a lair I'd temporarily become. One evening, watching a fiery sunset paint the clouds above the treetops, a fox trotted calmly along the opposite bank of my stream. It paused, glanced at me without fear, then vanished into the twilight. It felt like a farewell. I packed slowly, meticulously, savoring each familiar sound and scent. The weight of the backpack felt different now. Not just supplies, but memories, lessons, and a quiet strength. Stepping back onto the gravel parking lot 30 days later was jarring. The smell of exhaust, the glare of artificial lights, the sheer noise of a single passing car felt overwhelming. People moved quickly, faces lit by phone screens. But deep inside, the forest remained. The profound silence, the intricate web of life, the raw beauty of untamed nature, it had seeped into me. I carried the rhythm of the stream in my pulse, the vastness of the starry sky in my perspective, and the enduring patience of the ancient pines in my spirit. The city might reclaim my body, but a part of me would forever be sitting by that campfire, listening to the whispers of the pines, profoundly changed by the quiet, relentless heartbeat of the wild. The wilderness hadn't just been a place I camped. It had become a part of who I now was.